In the 1980s, the Chambers brothers weren't making music, they were making millions. Four brothers from small-town Arkansas moved to Detroit and built an empire that ruled the streets. Their operation was so big that it shocked even the FBI. They used business tactics, flashy marketing, and brutal violence to stay on top. But every empire falls. Larry Marlowe Chambers was born in 1950 in Marianna, Arkansas, to Curtis and Hazel Chambers. He was the third of their sons, following Curtis Jr. and Willie Lee. Soon after, he was joined by Danny and Billy Joe, known as BJ. In 1962, his brother Joe was born, followed by Otis Bernard Chambers. Curtis and Hazel, both natives of Lee County, Arkansas, began dating as teenagers and eventually married in 1948. Over the years, they had a total of 16 children. The Chambers brothers grew up in a rundown trailer home on their family's 44-acre farm in Marianna, a predominantly African-American town with high poverty levels. Marianna, the county seat of Lee County, had the second highest unemployment rate in Arkansas and ranked as the sixth poorest county in the U.S. In 1967, Curtis and Hazel opened Tin Top Inn, a bar and restaurant on their property, which became a frequent gathering spot for their sons. The first of the Chambers brothers to have legal trouble was Larry. On December 23, 1969, he was arrested and charged with auto theft after stealing 2 cars in Marianna for a joyride with a childhood friend. At the time, Larry had been living with his maternal grandparents in St. Louis, along with his brother Danny, and was only visiting for the holidays. On December 31st, he escaped from the Lee County Jail by overpowering a guard who had entered his cell to fix the toilet. That night, he hid in a church and the next day stole the pastor's car, embarking on a 2-day armed robbery spree. Larry nearly got caught during a routine traffic stop in Wauketa County, Arkansas. However, when state troopers approached his vehicle, he shot one of them and fled. He was eventually apprehended the next morning and charged with assault with intent to kill. After being convicted of shooting the officer, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Just 5 months into his sentence, Larry escaped but was caught in Phoenix, Arizona. He later managed another prison break by bribing a guard to look the other way. While on the run, he committed several gas station robberies and drove a stolen car to Pittsburgh. Larry was arrested again in Wynne, Arkansas, after attempting to rob a jewelry store. After serving 6 years and being released, he helped his brother Danny and their associate James Cooper burglarize a post office in Helena, Arkansas. The police found Danny and James's fingerprints at the scene, and both men confessed. However, Larry, who was still on parole, refused to make a statement. Since Danny and James had no prior criminal records, the sheriff's office offered them suspended sentences in exchange for testifying against Larry. Upon learning of the deal, Larry decided to plead guilty to burglary and theft charges, along with his brother and Cooper. Since Cooper could not afford an attorney, Larry and Danny's father hired lawyer Mike Etok, who was appointed to represent him as well. Larry attempted 3 jailbreaks while in police custody and was eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison. However, in 1977, the Arkansas State Supreme Court found his handwritten appeal so compelling that they overturned his conviction. Meanwhile, Willie Lee Chambers graduated from Lee High School in 1972 and served 2 years in the U.S. Army. In 1974, he moved to Detroit, Michigan, where his brother Danny had relocated 4 years earlier. Upon arriving in Detroit, Willie took a job as a mail carrier for the U.S. Postal Service. BJ, who stopped growing at 5 feet 5 inches, followed in their footsteps and moved to Detroit in 1978, 2 years after their parents divorced. He had left Marianna during his junior year of high school and later enrolled at Detroit's Kettering High School. To support himself, he took an after-school job as a janitor at Eastern Shoes Company. BJ also began selling marijuana for Lee County native Big Terry Colbert, who ran a convenience store. He was introduced to Colbert through Danny, who had worked with him at a Michigan automobile plant. Colbert, who had already established a marijuana business to supplement his income, opened the store after losing his auto plant job. That same year, Larry was found in possession of several weapons, stolen from a marijuana gun store, and was sent back to prison. Upon his release the following year, he launched another robbery spree, targeting over 100 jewelry stores across Arkansas. His preferred method was to drill a hole in the ceiling of a store after hours, gaining entry and stealing merchandise overnight. In 1980, BJ's girlfriend, Nisi, gave birth to their son, Billy Chambers Jr. Following this, BJ dropped out of school and quit his shoe store job to sell marijuana full-time. The following year, Nisi gave birth to their daughter. Though BJ had some adult clients in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, his primary customers were high school students from Detroit. His drug sales generated between $200 and $400 per day. In September 1981, Larry and another parolee stole a money order machine from an Arkansas post office and began selling fake money orders. The following month, he joined Willie and BJ in Detroit. However, he was soon arrested by an undercover U.S. postal inspector at a Highland Park, Michigan, motel during a sting operation set up by his accomplice. Convicted of stealing government property, Larry received a 4-year prison sentence and was sent to USP Leavenworth, a medium-security federal prison 25 miles northwest of Kansas City. Determined to make money while incarcerated, Larry established illegal businesses in prison, including organized gambling and extortion, reportedly making around $50,000. During one of his prison stays, he took an IQ test administered by a psychiatrist and scored 140, an intelligence level approaching genius. In 1982, BJ applied what he had learned under Colbert's mentorship and opened Willie's retail store with his brother on the corner of Detroit's Courchevel and St. Clair. Willie used his savings from the Postal Service job to fund the store, while BJ sold marijuana and heroin from the location. Willie also opened a car wash next to the store. In January 1983, Willie expanded the business by opening a convenience store on Detroit's Lower East Side, employing BJ, who used it as a base for his drug sales. Following a police raid on the store, now renamed BJ's Party Store, BJ moved his operation to low-cost houses he purchased. His drug business continued to grow. The operation soon expanded to include not only Willie, but also his brothers Danny, Joe, and David, along with his best friend Jerry Gant and Terry Colbert's younger brother and son. BJ hired little Terry, a native of Hughes, Arkansas, who had initially moved to Detroit in April to work for his father, paying him approximately $400 per week to sell marijuana. BJ also recruited Willie Boogaloo Driscoll and Perry Coleman, two of Nisi's brothers. In 1984, BJ began selling crack cocaine, having been introduced to it by Coleman, Nisi's older brother. With the rising popularity of crack in Detroit, Colbert's earnings skyrocketed from $1,000 per week to $3,000. The Chambers brothers quickly established a large-scale crack operation on Detroit's Lower East Side. That August, BJ was arrested and charged with assault after he and Joe got into a fight with two Detroit police officers who had pulled BJ over in front of his home. On September 1st, Officer John Autry, working undercover, purchased 3 bags of crack from Elaine Coleman Lucas at BJ and Danny Chambers' family home on Gray Street. 2 days later, on Labor Day, BJ, Danny, their cousin Alvin Chambers, and Lucas were arrested following a police raid on the Gray Street house where officers seized 2,000 packages of crack. Another raid was conducted on September 10th, though no arrests were made. With police scrutiny increasing, BJ decided to lay low and moved back to the family farm in Marianna, Arkansas, where he remained for the next 10 months, leaving his brother David and Gant in charge of day-to-day operations. However, the business struggled in his absence, prompting BJ to return to Detroit in 1985. Upon his return, he fired nearly all of his non-family employees, including Driscoll and Colbert. He then recruited Detroit natives Anthony Alexander and Eric Wilkins, as well as Marshall Glenn from Marianna. Glenn, in turn, brought in other young men from Marianna, including James McKinney, to work for the organization. He managed crack houses and handled pickups and drop-offs. The staff overhaul allowed BJ to expand his operation from 6 crack houses to 50. That same year, Larry Chambers moved to Detroit after his release from prison on April 29th. In July, he founded the Wrecking Crew, the enforcement arm of the organization. He recruited Arkansas natives Roderick Byrd and William Jackson, forming a trio known for their brutal tactics. On one occasion, Larry and 2 crew members viciously attacked an employee who had attempted to pass off plaster chips as $8 crack rocks. The assault involved beating the worker with a lamp, a 2x4, and a television set before pouring hot grease on him. In contrast, BJ's leadership style was defined by extravagant employee perks, including lavish trips to Las Vegas and Florida. Despite his criminal activities, Larry also pursued academics. He enrolled at Wayne State University, Michigan's 3rd largest university, where he studied music history and Spanish. During this time, he began a relationship with Detroit teenager Belinda Lumpkin, with whom he moved into the house he shared with David on Grayshot Avenue and Noddle Street. As the organization grew, the demand for cocaine exceeded the amount Terry Colbert could supply. Consequently, BJ and Larry bypassed Colbert and began sourcing their drugs directly from Sam Curry and Art Derrick, thanks to an introduction by Perry Coleman. In March 1986, the Chambers brothers purchased a 4-story red brick apartment building at 1350 East Grand Boulevard in Detroit for $75,000, transforming it into their new base of operations. Overseen by Larry, the building was repurposed for drug processing, sales, and storage. Residents were either forced out or paid off. The building manager, Patricia Middleton, the girlfriend of David Havard, was hired to handle Larry's bookkeeping and cook for the bar and grill that he established on the 1st floor. The building, known as the Broadmore, was divided into specialized sections. Upon entering, buyers were escorted to designated areas. Powdered cocaine was sold on the 1st floor. A porn shop operated on the same level, while crack was distributed on the 3rd and 4th floors, which also housed prostitutes. The 2nd floor functioned as a lounge where customers could consume their drugs. To encourage sales, buyers were even offered free shots of tequila on weekends. At its peak, the Broadmoor generated an estimated $100,000 in daily profits. The youngest Chambers brother, Otis, spent his summers working with his older brothers in Detroit while still in high school. Quality control was maintained by having undercover workers test buy crack at various houses where they were unknown. Many employees, most of whom were high school students from Marianna, were issued photo ID cards. They were typically paid $100 per day and were expected to be on call 24/7, often skipping school to work 12-hour shifts in crack houses, fortified with chains and barred windows. Employees were required to follow strict rules posted in the crack houses, which included bans on driving over the speed limit, wearing gold chains or expensive sneakers while transporting drugs or cash, and carrying drugs and cash at the same time. Workers who broke the rules faced hefty fines: $50 for playing loud music while making deliveries, $100 for neglecting duties or failing to follow instructions, $300 for stealing or using drugs on the job, and $500 for discussing organization business with outsiders. The Chambers organization recruited much of its workforce, over 150 employees, from their hometown of Marianna, Arkansas. Teens were hired for roles including couriers, enforcers, drug cooks, and street dealers. These business practices helped the Chambers brothers amass an estimated $55 million annually. Their immense wealth earned them the nickname the Cash Money Brothers. At their peak, their crack sales totaled an estimated $5 million per month, employing 500 workers and controlling half of Detroit's 200 crack houses, while supplying an additional 500. In 1983 and 1989, the organization generated an average of $55 million in annual profits. They even had plans to expand their operations into Flint, Michigan, and Toledo, Ohio. The Chambers brothers used their vast fortune to fund luxurious purchases, including vacation properties in Jamaica. They flaunted their wealth in home videos, one of which showcased gold bathroom fixtures and enormous stacks of cash in one of their homes. By February 1986, their empire was at its peak. Joe Chambers was released from federal prison after serving a 2-year sentence for stealing food stamps and postal order slips. However, on March 29th, he was killed when a freight train collided with his vehicle in Marianna. His funeral, held in Arkansas on April 4th, was attended by most members of the organization. The following month, his older brothers arrived in Marianna in 3 chauffeured limousines to attend Otis's high school graduation. Also in 1986, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, launched Operation No Crack in an effort to curb the growing popularity of crack cocaine. A tip hotline, 1-800-NO-CRACK, was established and received 1,500 reports of crack sales in its first month. In early August, Patricia Middleton became a confidential informant for the DEA. Then, on August 25th at 1:30 p.m., police conducted 2 simultaneous raids on properties connected to the Chambers brothers. In October, little Terry Colbert also began working as an informant, providing information that led directly to a police raid on Larry's 2-story residence on Albion Street. A subsequent raid on a crack house on Noddle Street uncovered a list of employee conduct rules, later nicknamed the Crack Commandments. Despite increasing law enforcement pressure, the business remained highly profitable. To show his appreciation, Larry treated his associates to a luxury cruise in Jamaica on New Year's Eve. On April 24, 1987, around 4 p.m., Otis and his girlfriend, who was driving without a license, were pulled over by police in Hughes, Arkansas, for failing to stop at a stop sign while heading to Marianna. During a search of the blue Corvette, which Otis claimed to have borrowed from a friend, Hughes Police Chief Herbert Neighbors and his partner discovered a green plastic bag containing $59,624 in cash behind the passenger seat. Both Otis and the driver were taken to the police station, where Chief Neighbors personally drove the Corvette. The IRS ultimately seized the cash. In September 1987, a local television station aired a program about the organization titled All in the Family. One of the highlights was a videotape confiscated during a police raid at Larry's home. The footage showed Larry and his associate M.C. Poole counting stacks of cash and boasting about their wealth. Another clip featured Larry's associate, William Jackson, shaking a laundry basket overflowing with money. On September 12th, tragedy struck the family when David Chambers died from AIDS-related complications. Then, in mid-December, members of the wrecking crew were arrested after the unsealing of federal grand jury indictments. On December 19th, police executed a search warrant at an apartment on Detroit's East Outer Drive, where they found Larry hiding in the bathroom. Cocaine was discovered on the kitchen table, and a gun was found in an open cabinet above the stove. Deemed a flight risk, Larry was denied bail. BJ was arrested at his home on Beaconsfield Street in Detroit on January 31st, 1988. He was found in possession of a handgun and 7 ounces of cocaine. Following an 18-month investigation, the Chambers brothers were taken into custody in February 1988. During their arrests, Detroit police and DEA agents seized 250 weapons, 68 vehicles, 6 kilograms of cocaine, and over $1 million in cash and jewelry. In total, 22 members of the Chambers organization were named in a 15-count indictment. On February 29, 1988, U.S. Attorney Roy Hayes of the Eastern District of Michigan led the prosecution against the group. By the time the trial began, 4 defendants had pleaded guilty, and 4 others remained at large. Most of the defendants were tried by a jury, while Willie Lee Chambers was tried before a judge. During the September trial, former Chambers employee Felicia Gilchrist, a 19-year-old granted immunity by the government, testified that she worked 24-hour shifts, selling crack through a hole cut in a wall. She revealed that she sometimes shared shifts with her 14-year-old sister Alicia, and even brought her newborn to work when the baby was just a week old. Little Terry Colbert testified that on Otis's orders he was beaten with a baseball bat and shot in the left leg following a July 1987 argument between his uncle and the Chambers brothers. Colbert managed to escape by jumping out of a window. The attack ended his career as a crack dealer, which had been earning him $3,000 per week. After fleeing, he was treated at Detroit Receiving Hospital. Both Colbert and James McKinney testified about Marshall Glenn's involvement in the organization. Perry Coleman also took the stand as a government witness, testifying for half an hour as part of a plea deal that reduced his conspiracy sentence from 25 years to 5. On October 28, 1988, all 4 Chambers brothers, along with 5 other members of their organization, were convicted on conspiracy charges. In addition to conspiracy, Otis was convicted of cocaine possession, while Larry and BJ were also found guilty of operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Wilkins and Lumpkin, both minors, were convicted of conspiracy to distribute and conspiracy to possess crack and marijuana with intent to distribute. The sentencing took place on March 25, 1989. Willie Chambers was sentenced to 21 years in prison and fined $350,000. Otis received 27 years and a $350,000 fine. BJ was handed a 45-year sentence and fined $500,000, while Larry was sentenced to life in prison and fined $250,000. Willie was released from prison in August 2007, BJ in December 2010, and Otis in November 2011. Larry remains incarcerated at USP Terre Haute, a high-security federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button. For more videos on Underworld Icons, click the video above.